So in this video, we're going to be talking about the sprocket supports around the SEL PQA and quality data specifically. And so if you are at our continuous program improvement resource page, you'll find some of those resources. And I want to point them out quickly before I get into more detail. If you scroll down, you'll notice that on the right-hand side, we have the program quality assessment resources. Here are where all the documents I'll be referencing are located, and so you can certainly click there. If you want a little bit more support, a little bit more of an overview, you'll scroll down till you get to the keyword quality, and that will bring up this collecting quality data page. Again, it has a little bit more of an overview on it, including this video and some of the resources. So some of the things that I'm going to be referencing today, you'll find here. The SEL PQA notes sheet will be one of them, the SEL PQA tool itself, and then the other documents that I'll be referring to are all here. And these are different strategies to consider in thinking about how to engage your team and your site in internal observations or getting them on board with the information as well. So to start out by kind of showing you those documents, this is the SEL PQA note sheet. This is great. It's a 3-page document that does cover all of the different components of the SEL PQA. So you'll see the dark gray are the different domains. These lighter gray are the different scales. And then each of the items below are the items that you'll find in the tool. And so this is kind of a nice at a glance. You can take notes as you're having conversations. Again, we'll talk about how to use this sheet. It also can be actually used for your observation notes before it goes into Scores Reporter. The other document I mentioned is the SEL PQA tool itself. So this is the 22-page document that has a lot more detail about what is considered a 1, 3, and 5. It can be used for planning purposes, but also in that conversation. And the last document, and this is what I'm going to really be going through today, is thinking about the different strategies you might take in supporting your team and thinking about quality data. So this first one is about getting started with the PQA, and this can be used for a site that's completely new and has not used the SEL PQA before, or it could be that you're looking at ways to engage your staff in a different way. And so it just walks you through the steps. I'm going to talk about a couple of them, but mainly it's about bringing people together. So are you bringing your staff together to have that conversation? Looking at the tool, you'll notice there's this note sheet I mentioned. Just looking through the domains and the scales and identifying what are 2 to maybe 4 scales that you really want to focus on. We know that the tool is big and can be overwhelming. And so if you really focus on what are your staff, what are you interested in thinking about right now, maybe as you start your cycle, or this could be after your huddle and you've identified kind of what areas you want to pay attention to, and that might inform those 2 to 4 scales. And then once you have those identified, really just focus on those for discussion, thinking about how your team feels about those practices and how they show up in your program. If you think you're like really strong in it and you're talking about and giving examples, that's great. If you're thinking maybe this is something we kind of do, but we want to think about it because we're not consistent, or, ooh, you just know you maybe need to work on it. And if that is the case, either that you need to work on it or you want to be more consistent, maybe that's a priority you focus on moving forward. And so that's where you could then go into the tool maybe and coming up with some plans on what it looks like in your curriculum, those different practices. One thing we've included on the back side of this page are some team reflection questions and ideas about going deeper in the next steps that you could use. So this is something that would really be great, again, if you've got a new team or if you're coming together at the beginning of your program cycle in that plan phase, to really think about what do you want to focus on and give you some direction and making sure that staff have a shared understanding about practices, how they show up, what is intentionally designed in your program, and that it does have purpose that meets those different areas, or maybe what you want to build up as you start your program year. Another way to think about this is the next sheet, and this is about team PQA reflection for scoring. So this would actually give you a data point that you could use at the huddle. It is something you would do with a team of people. And the keyword there is reflection. So this is not an actual observation where you're going in and watching programs, but it's a conversation you have with your team, bringing them together. This is best done when you have at least one person that can serve as a lead that does understand the tool. Maybe they've done the PQA basics, so they understand how it's structured, and can kind of lead the conversation. And when you bring those folks together and you look at whether it's the full PQA or maybe even just those identified items, then you would have that conversation as a team. What does it look like? And having them share anecdotes like, well, here's how we create a safe space, or here's how we scaffold learning, or here's how we talk about growth mindset, whatever those pieces are. And some of them, they might be like, I don't know, like that's a new area that they're not familiar with. But they can provide maybe examples for some of those other areas. And so you've started that conversation, building understanding with your staff, and again, maybe building some expertise from your staff that they can share with new staff. So once you have those narrative examples, whether they're really robust or maybe it's things that, didn't feel quite as strong in terms of examples, that's when the lead would actually do the scoring. So we know that those anecdotes, that evidence that you have now just from the conversation, you would be able to score a 135 based on what staff have said that demonstrate where those things show up. Sometimes we know that what we think of as that practice isn't exactly how it's reflected in the tool. And so scoring it as it's reflected in the tool is an important piece that can help inform you all in, like, maybe there's some additional training that's needed to understanding or to strengthen those areas. So once those scores are created, they can be put into the scores reporter system, and then you can, at your huddle, use those reports to continue the conversation and identify what you want to celebrate and different opportunities that you want to explore for professional development or growth in your program, or that align with some of those other data sets that you experience through the huddle. So that's the team reflection for scoring. Next, we're going to move on to team consensus observations. So this might be something that a program that has maybe multiple activities that are happening at one site, or maybe you have multiple programs across different sites, could work for a lot of different contexts, but mainly it has multiple folks in your team have done the PQA basics. They understand how to do observations and how to do the scoring. And so each staff would observe either a portion of a program. So maybe we're all going to observe the same program, but I'm going to observe the first 15 minutes. Someone else is going to come in and observe part of it. Maybe someone observes the end, or it could be that you are observing any multitude of programs over different sessions. But what happens is that each staff completes their own evidence and takes their own notes and scores that. And then you come together to do a team scoring. And so what is beneficial here is that then you can share the different evidence that you have from different program sites, and you can, again, have a more deep understanding of where are these practices happening very strong, what are some good examples of those practices, and kind of get a sense of what it looks like across maybe multiple staff as well. There's definitely some pros to doing this type of observation structure with your team and coming to consensus. And there are some downsides as well. So when you're looking at multiple programs and using that to come to a consensus, you often then will either find that you have some programs that are scoring maybe a 5 in certain areas where other ones are a 1. And so in some of those cases, it ends up just becoming a lot of 3s. And so in terms of scores, that might be an area that you realize that the data itself at the huddle may be a little bit more muddled or gray. But I do think that the conversation in creating that opportunity to engage other staff in the scores as part of your huddle is really a beneficial thing to think about. Again, builds capacity within your staff team, better understanding of the tool, watching and observing other people in programming and getting new ideas that way is also helpful. Just building confidence in the tool and how to do observations in general. Next is PQA for internal observations. This is our traditional measure of how we think about using the PQA for internal observations. So it is an observation. You are watching the program. It is someone within your staff team. It could be staff observing other staff. Often it's a supervisor or a coordinator that maybe is doing the observation, someone with a little bit more flexibility in their schedule. I would say it's always great to be able to have your direct service staff observe each other. That's a great learning opportunity and also helps them better understand the practices and the tool. And so that does take time to build up that capacity as well. In these internal observations, each staff would do their own evidence and scoring. And so for some organizations, you might only have capacity to do one observation. If you have multiple observations, that's great, especially for programs that have multiple programs going on within them. So when you go to run the reports, you have some options. You can print each individual observation separately, or again, if you have multiple observations, you can do an aggregate and combine them together. So it's not about how one person is done, but just an overall themes that you notice within your program. You can also do a combination of the external observation compared next to the internal observations as well. And so the main thing is, as you think about your quality data for this year, really having a plan on how do you intend to move forward and collect that data or engage around the PQA. We're really about bringing people together, establishing a shared language, and then sometimes it's about focusing on the right size. And so if the full tool feels overwhelming for you this year, identify those few scales that you want to focus on and use that as a strategy to focus where you want to do improvements. Check in at the huddle on how you're doing in those areas. Celebrate when you've got it. Make adjustments when you need to, and continuously work to improve your program.